Hello friends, welcome to module 4. In this module, we will discuss about creative techniques and tools for concept generation, and after discussing all the techniques, we would finally discuss about concept evaluation. This module would be jointly taken by me and my colleague, Assistant Professor Supradeep Das. So, let us see what we will cover in this module and what would be the learning outcomes from this module. Friends, in this module, we will be discussing about how to use different tools and techniques for creative idea generation. I am sure this module would be one of the most significant and interesting modules for all of you. As designers, the most crucial part in designing a product is the conceptualization phase. Whatever we have discussed until now, from the first module to the third module, talks about how you gather information, understand different processes, materials, products, be it tangible or to some extent intangible. But this is the module in which you will understand, or rather we will discuss how interesting ideas can be generated. Friends, when we talk about generation of ideas, many a time as designers, we cannot guarantee that this is the moment when we will get an idea. It is very difficult to anticipate that actual situation and moment when we will get an idea. Or as a matter of fact, you may get many ideas, but whether each one of them is innovative in nature. By innovative, I mean there is a degree of newness in your concept, is a question that always arises in the mind of designers. If you see in literatures, or if you see what visionaries and designers in the past and understand their works, you can notice some subtle important information which, if practiced, would provide us with certain inputs regarding how interesting ideas or ideas which are significant in nature, the aha moment, can be captured. We will discuss about all these techniques in detail. After completing discussing about different tools and techniques for idea generation, we would finally talk about evaluating concepts and finalizing a concept. Friends, this is the other most important segment in this module. While you would be doing assignments in this course, you would realize that you will have not one but many ideas. And the question that would be put in front of you is, which one do you select? Or rather, let me say it in this way, which one should you take forward to the production or the development phase? Now, this is a very complex situation given the amount of ideas that you have generated. To help designers address this issue, there are some evaluation matrices that supports designers to decide which one or which of the many ideas you can select and move forward towards the development phase. So, after this module, it is expected that you would be able to come up with some creative ideas using the techniques and tools that we will discuss, and once those concepts are there with you, you would be able to evaluate them, select one of the concepts and take it forward to the evaluation or development stage and testing it with your end users. So, let us start the first part of this module. Friends, creativity is a buzzword if you hear or if you see around every discipline that we talk about. in higher studies as well as in organizations, the only thing that matters is how much creative you are. So, the word creativity in itself can be explained as ways through which multiple ideas are networked, intertwined or connected, or concepts are connected to come up with a better concept. That is how we define creativity as. But the catch here is, apart from being creative, you also need to be innovative in nature. That means the ideas that you are generating should have a degree of newness in them. Now, this is only possible when you have understood the market, the existing products, you have studied them in detail, and you know the benchmark that are available across the markets. Once you know the benchmark, once you know what is existing, it is only possible to extrapolate or think of concepts that extends the boundary of what is existing currently in the market. So, this is the intention of a designer while pursuing the design process. Now, here comes the question, how do you become creative? Can creativity be trained? Is there a process by which a person can become more creative? This is an elusive question, a question which many a time many people relate with the famous anecdote whether the hen has arrived the first, was the first one to arrive, or the egg was the first one to arrive. But friends, literatures, if you read literatures across creativity studies, you would realize that over a period of time, various psychologists, design researchers, as well as scientists have said that creativity can be trained over a period of time. Now, how do they say that? They say that based on the basis that there are techniques through which creative ideas can be generated. Friends, here I would suggest you to read the book Ingenious, written by Professor Tina Selig of Stanford Creativity Lab, where she exhaustively talks about her experience with students and in the class to come up with ideas. She also discusses many techniques. Some of the techniques that we would discuss today is in reference to the lectures and the commentaries of Professor Tina Selig. Now, today we would start with some general techniques, about 3 techniques we will discuss, and in the later part of this module, which would be covered by my colleague Assistant Professor Supradeep Das, he would discuss details about multiple tools that are extensively used, which are rigid in nature, but when diligently followed provides greater impetus on creative idea generation. So, let us start about discussing the first points or few general techniques about creativity. The first one is working with forced constraints. Friends, this is a very unique way of a unique approach of coming up with interesting ideas. Working with forced constraints, when constraints are there, when constraints are enshrined into your mind that you cannot think of anything else beyond what is being mentioned to you. That is the first technique through which you can come up with creative ideas. The second one is rethink the problem, change perspective. Friends, many people say that the way you define a question or the way a question is being put forward, it exactly encapsulates the answer in it. So, the question itself has the answer in it. So, as designers, we need to learn how do we rephrase a problem statement. How do we change perspectives? And the third one is lateral versus vertical thinking. Now, this is a very common discussion across the design fraternity about having one way of looking at the concept and digging it throughout to come up with extensions of the same concept versus thinking about multiple concepts. So, we would discuss about these three techniques. These are general techniques of creative idea generation in detail today. Working with forced constraints. Friends, what do you feel when I say that abundance creates a lot of confusion? What do you understand, or what do you comprehend rather from this statement? See, even if you see an interface, for example, if you look at an interface and you have multiple features in that interface, many tasks can be completed. You really get confused, and it is the same with your users. They also get confused. So, more always creates confusion in the mind of the person. So, therefore, the first technique that we are discussing today, it talks about working with forced constraints. So, resource abundance can actually be counterproductive. This is what literature tells us about. For example, if I ask you that come up with the concept of a juicer, and you start about thinking about a concept, you would see your mind going around in multiple directions, and it becomes a very tough time for you to really identify which direction, if you move, would provide you with meaningful concepts. Problems, challenges and opportunities may become more manageable with constraints that direct us to make the best out of what we have. So, in those situations, if we set or define a direction, it becomes more manageable for us to think about certain concepts in a more detailed way. Let me give you an example about what we are talking here. Imagine the same example, like the brief is you are supposed to design a juicer for the Indian housewives, right? That is what exactly the brief says. The moment you get this brief and you start conceptualization, as I said, your ideas can go in any direction, and you can become really, or it can become really tough for you to catch hold of one idea and define it, or rather detail it out with a great degree of versatility. Now, compare this situation with the situation I am saying now. Now, as a designer, if I say or if I think that let me first think about the cost, okay, I am only going to think in the direction of cost. So, my intention is that I have seen in the market the minimum cost price of a juicer is around 500 rupees. I am assuming, I mean this is an example, it's not perfect, but just say we are taking an example. So, think that the least amount of price or the minimum price of a juicer product in the market is rupees 500. Now, while I get this brief, I think of cost as a constraint, and I decide that let me work it out in this way. I would conceptualize a product where cost is the constraint, and for me, I want to design a product that is within rupees 100, that does not exceed 100 rupees when it goes for production and comes out in the market. Friends, what happens when you make this statement inside you? You clearly get a direction, isn't it? You clearly get a direction, the direction in which your concept generation should proceed. That means you are going to talk about, you are actually going to think about the materials that are being used in coming up with a low cost product like the juicer. You are also going to think about the functions and features, and you are going to think about how to reduce them and use minimum number of parts so that the cost can be reduced. And you also want to look at the product as an affordable one, that people can just use it for some few times and discard it and then buy another one. So, it is like a disposable juicer. After 5, 6, 10 trials, it can be disposed of. So, have you seen, friends, the power this first technique provides us with? The moment you define a constraint like cost in the example that we have discussed, it provides you with enormous insights or enormous ways through which you can really think about creative products that are unique and that will provide you with sufficient impetus to start your journey of concept generation. The same can be done. I mean, for example, if you do not want to use cost, then set constraint like materials. So, the same thing, okay, I am going to design in an affordable juicer with paper. Friends, it provides you with a lot of opportunities when the moment you talk about materials and you allow your imagination to only focus on that material and not focus on the other things that you have at your disposal. Imagine the power of this concept when you talk about a juicer that is made out of paper. That means it must be robust in nature, it must be disposable in nature, and all other characteristics that define using paper as a juicer should be explored. And think about the power of an idea. I mean, it's a juicer on the go. You are probably, you can buy 10 pieces of this juicer, keep it along with you in your bags, in your wallets and anything, and whenever you want to use it, you can just pull it out and use it, make it come out of its shape and then use this juicer. Now, constraints can also be put in terms of timelines and deadlines. I ask many of my students to come up with concepts within 2 hours. I put a deadline to them that you have to come up with a concept within the next 2 hours. And friends, believe me, it works exceedingly well. So, the first technique that we have discussed today tells us to work with forced constraints. I am sure with the examples that I have given, you have got a glimpse of what forced constraints talk about. We will now move on to the next technique, which talks about rethink the problem, change in perspective. Friends, if you remember our discussion we had during module 2, I did talk about changing perspectives. Now, perspectives are very crucial for in the life of any one of us, right? We judge a person based on the perspectives or the frames we have. Say for example, the moods I am talking about. So, these frames influences us the way we construct reality across us. The next technique is rethink the problem, change in perspective. Friends, perspective is a very crucial thing in day-to-day life. Right from comprehending about our surroundings to interacting with our friends, perspective influences our thoughts, our actions and our decisions. Consider this, we had a bad frame or a frame with negative emotions about a particular thing or about a particular friend. Now, the same friend, when it comes down, even if he is truthful or he is dutiful and that person comes in front of us, we would behave in a very weird way because of the frame of reference that we have for him. This is the power of friends' perspective. Perspectives influences your ability, or it influences how you visualize reality. Whatever you see in reality or you comprehend about it is always influenced by the frames of reference we have. Now, here the second most important point is, can we change this frame of reference? Or if we change the frame of reference, how does it benefit us? Friends, in the discussion in module 2 regarding user study, we discussed about changing perspectives as well. Remember, I talked about an example or about a statement I made where I said that consider this statement, the sun rises from the east. Now, this is an universal truth, right? While this statement is true, the other statements like the sun does not rises from the west, the sun does not rises from the north and south either, these are also true, right? So, this is to some extent you can appreciate how perspective influence our thoughts. Let us look at a classical example of lifts. Now, if you see here, the problem that is being provided to you is that the elevator is too slow, right? The brief is the elevator is too slow, and you were supposed to think about a concept to address this issue. Now, the moment you hear this statement, the elevator is too slow, it is a leading statement anyway, you start thinking about concepts, and what are the general concepts that you might come up with? Make the elevator faster, install a new lift, replace the motor, or improve the algorithm, right? At the first stage or the first moment, these are the most crucial concepts or important concepts that comes up to our mind. Now, what happens if we change the perspective? We reframe the problem statement that we had initially discussed altogether. Let us see what happens. The moment we reframe the problem, you can see in this slide that we can think about the elevator is too slow as the weight is annoying. We can really think about that whether the elevator is too slow or the time taken by the users to reach from point A to point B is long, and therefore, this delay or this long period of time is making people annoying. I mean, it's this long wait is annoying for them, right? Now, what happens if you reframe the problem in this way? Then the solution that you figure out is drastically different. Let us see what solution can we figure out for the rephrased problem. So, the focus would be make the wait feel shorter. Now, to do this, what we can do? We can play some music inside the lift, we can put up some mirrors. Now, if you see and compare the solutions that you have observed in the first stage, which is the first stage, versus the second stage, what do you observe? You observe that the solutions are drastically different. Friends, here we are not discussing about whether solution 1 is better or solution 2 is better. What we are trying to say is how to come up with more creative and innovative ideas. Well, if you see the first solution, install a new lift, replace the motor, improve the algorithm, seems very common, and probably everyone given this problem statement would come up with these ideas. The moment you rephrase the problem or change the perspective, the concepts that you get, like play music, put up mirrors, so that people can watch themselves while they are moving from point A to point B, and that somehow they can kill the time. Something very drastic in nature, that not obvious in nature, and many people will not think in these lines. So, this is the power of changing perspectives. So, friends, remember, one way is to look to the problem from different frames of reference that you have. Try doing this and it will provide you with greater results. One of the basic tools that are used for changing or reframing the problem or changing the perspective is by asking the question why. Friends, this is a very powerful question. Whenever a brief is given to you, always raise this question that why do I need to see the brief in the way it is being provided to me? What are the different ways in which a brief can be viewed? When I talk about designing a bridge, it essentially does not talk about only relating two land masses divided by a river. It also talks about movement of people. It talks about connecting people. It talks about connecting commodities from one place or delivering commodities from one place to the another. So, friends, this is a very powerful technique. The moment a brief is given to you, the first thing all of you should do is question it, ask the question why, and try to rephrase the problem. Try to change the frame from where you are viewing the problem. That means changing perspective, and then see it will provide you with miraculous ways of getting concepts. The next technique that we would be discussing is lateral versus vertical thinking. Friends, as the word is very simple in nature and probably the word would tell you about what lateral and vertical is. If you look at this picture, digging something down is called as lateral, right? And when you move from one point to the other and from other and to the other and to the other, this is more like you are going in a horizontal direction. That's more lateral thinking. So, what do we mean by that? So, think about an example that in the village you are supposed to dig a well to figure out water. Now, how does well dug out? I mean, you dig at a particular place, and the moment the water table is little bit higher, you decide that okay, let us go in that one. Now, it can also happen that you are unable to figure out water table, or the water table is much lower. So, you dig it in that place even more and go on digging that well in that particular point. This is one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is you abandon that space and you move to the adjacent area and start digging there. After some initial explorations, you again abandon that area and look for something else beside that adjacent area. That is more like horizontal or lateral thinking. Now, what is the benefit of this? Friends, think about a concept as a tool, as a product. So, what happens when we think about the concept as a tool, as a product? Our mind is very clever. It is always biased, and it continues to think in that direction of the concept itself, either tweaking one feature or changing one feature or changing something here and there, but it would continue thinking in that direction of the concept, of a particular concept. Now, that is what I call as a vertical thinking. Many a time what you should practice is, the moment a concept comes to your mind, continue thinking for some time. After that, abandon that concept. Now, how do you think? You have to doodle out in your sketchbook. After doodling out it in your sketchbook, abandon that idea and go for a drastically different concept that is not in any way similar to what you have thought of. Like this, if you continue thinking about drastically different ideas which does not or has no relation with the previous one, will make your concepts be more powerful. That is an example of how lateral thinking and vertical thinking is carried out. You can probably use one of the most powerful techniques in doing this is mind mapping. So, in mind mapping, what we do is we doodle out a concept, like this, and we continue thinking in those directions. For example, okay, let me place this square as this, no, it does not look good, then okay, let me little bit make the edges round and see how it happens, no, it does not look good, and okay, let me reduce the size of it, let me see it look good, but we are continuing to think in the direction of the square. Now, this is one square. The other one is thinking about a circle. Okay, now what about this circle? Now, let me see if I can think about a smaller circle or bigger circle. Right. Now, friends, this is what a mind map does. It captures the doodles and let you know in which direction your concepts are moving. If you see here, this is vertical only because you are focusing on the square in itself, but moment you changed, this is more lateral in nature. You are right, this is more lateral in nature. So, you can use this kind of doodling and with structures which are often called as mind maps to create your concepts. So, the last part of this module of concept evaluation, and until now we have covered the various techniques and tools based on which creative ideas can be generated. Friends, concept evaluation is very important step in your design process. Following the various tools and techniques that we have discussed, you might land in a position where you will have multiple ideas or concept in front of you. Now, it is also vital for a designer to finally select one of the best ideas and proceed towards the final development stage. Now, how do you select the final or the best one out of all the concepts that you have generated? Friends, I know that discarding one concept over the other is very painful for designers, because each one is equally dear to the designers. But to make sure that we come to the realization phase where a product is manufactured and delivered to the market, we need to select one. Concept evaluation matrix provides us with that platform or with that tool through which we can evaluate our concepts and select the final concept. So, it is an evaluation criteria, and what we do is we compare the generated concepts in terms of their strengths and weak necks. Friends, if you can see this table in this slide, in the left hand side of the table are the various criteria. Now, what are criteria? Probably in your design brief or during your user study, you would be able to define the criteria based on which your product should be developed. For example, let us say an example, the criteria are cost, durability, effectiveness, noise, safety. This is an example of what we are seeing. And then on top of it, you have the various concepts that are being put into here. So, what a concept evaluation matrix does, you can take a scale between 1 to 5, or say you can take it from 0 to 1 to 5, right. Now, what I want you to do is take each concept and provide a score in the scale of 0 to 5. You can give negative also if it is the other way around, and provide those scores in the respective criteria for each of the concept. For example, when I am talking about concept 1, for the criteria 1, I feel the concept 1 which is cost, the criteria 1 is cost, the concept 1 stands at being very cheap. It would hardly produce, take too much manufacturing cost, so that we can have a very least amount of cost price in the market. So, I would give it a 4, right. For concept 2, I think it is moderate, it is not very low, but it is not highly priced as well. So, I would provide it at 3. Concept 3 is would be really costly, the kind of ideas that I have. If I really try to make those things happen, it would become really costly. So, probably I would give it a 0, and concept 4 is more costly, it is very, very costly. It is exactly the opposite to what we have thought of, and I can give -1 as well, if I feel like, right. Similarly, we do rank, provide marks for each one of these criteria across this concept. So, say 2, 3, 0, 1, 5, 4, 1, 2. Like this, once you put these marks and calculate the total marks here. So, for example, if there are only 3 criteria and we have 4 concepts here, if you see if you sum all these values up, what you will get is total is 7 here, here it is 10, here it is 5, here it is 2. So, finally, based on this score, you can select the concept 2 as the best performing concept across all the concepts that you have generated, and you can select this concept and move it towards your detailed drawing and manufacturing stage. So, this is about concept evaluation. Friends, always make sure that once you have all the concepts, you generate these criteria and evaluate your concept based on these criteria, and finally select one out of them and proceed towards the next phase of realization. Thank you.
So, hello participants. So, in this lecture I will be discussing about concept generation tools and also concept selection metrics. There are various kinds of concept generation methods. So, in basic methods there are brainstorming, 65 methods, camper, analogy, and there are morphological method also using morphological chart. There is logical method where trees comes under this. So, here I will be discussing about brainstorming, 65 method, scamper, analogy and morphological chart. Trees will take a long time and it is not easy within this short video. So, I will not discuss trees here. The first one is brainstorming. So, in brainstorming, a group of people will sit and try to find out solution for a particular problem, and here it is very important to see what we should do during brainstorming and also what we should not do. So, and let us see do's and don'ts. First thing what we should do is capture everything. So, in your group there may be different kind of people, so they may have different opinion. You should not be judgmental. Whatever ideas are coming from, you should note down. Next is active participation. You should motivate your teammate to participate spontaneously, and also next thing is when somebody is giving some idea, you can ask clarifying question instead of judgmental or to judge people. You should not ask questions. So, here you can ask clarifying questions. For example, if somebody is giving an idea, you can ask what would be the principle, how will it work. This kind of questions are allowed. What you should not do, you should not evaluate in the beginning itself when somebody is giving ideas, and you should not reject it basically. So, and what you should not do is force participation. So, you should not ask somebody that give me idea. So, idea will come spontaneously and he must be thinking. So, give him some time to think, and then he will take part in your brainstorming spontaneously. Do not ask questions to judge. So, in the beginning itself, if you judge this idea is not good, it will not work and all this, so it will demotivate your teammates. So, it is not advisable to judge in the first place. So, let us see how to do brainstorming. For example, you want to design a toy. So, what kind of characteristics it should have? Basically, it sometimes you can note down characteristics, sometimes you can note down constraints. So, based on the type of project you have. So, for example, you want a toy. So, the toy must be multilingual. Okay. Then it should have good aesthetics. So, under aesthetics it may come color and form, then safety. So, if you are designing for kids, that means he or she, basically the children may put the toy on the mouth, so it may harm their body. So, it should not be toxic material. Okay. It should be BPA free. So, like this you have to think, basically you have to create bubbles of thoughts. So, at the end of the discussion you have to connect all those dots okay, which are useful for the final product. Next is 635 method. So, in the 635 method there will be a blank sheet, and on this so 6 people will generate 3 ideas in 5 minutes. Okay. Okay. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and the 6th person will be there, and they will generate 3 ideas in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. So, idea 1, idea 2 and idea 3. So, within 5 minutes he has to create 3 ideas. So, quickly it may work, it may not work, but you have to generate idea. Basically you are forcing your mind to think beyond the usual thinking procedure. So, in this the second person can build their idea on top of the idea 1 or idea 2. So, it is allowed also. So, that is how you will have, after 30 minutes you will have lot of ideas. Okay. You will have 18 ideas. Now, you can combine idea 3 of the first person with the idea 1 of the 5th person. So, you can combine 2 ideas, you can combine 3 ideas. Now, you can take the good part of this idea, you can take good part of this idea and this idea, and you can make a new combination of ideas. Next is morphological chart. Morphological charts are used when you are clear about the components of the product. For example, in a product you have 6 components. Okay. So, component 1, component 2, component 3, component 4, component 5 and component 6. So, for component 1, for example, how to give power input to my product. So, it can be solar, it can be AC current, it can be battery, anything. So, generate as many as possible ideas for component 1 and so as component 2 and for component 3. At the end, so you will have for component 1 multiple ideas, for component 2 multiple ideas and component 3 multiple ideas. Okay. For all components you will have multiple ideas. Now, you have to combine the best ideas and create combination of ideas. So, for example, using battery for component 2, this idea, what will be the kind of a product. So, you can take option this with this. Okay. So, this can be one concept. Okay. So, similarly, you can create a different kind of concept. So, in morphology, basically for each component you have to generate different kind of ideas and then combination. Next is analogy. Analogy is taking inspiration from something else. So, for here, for example, from the kingfisher, bullet train idea has been taken, and you can see the beak of the kingfisher is taken as inspiration for the bullet train for high speed. So, similarly, not only from nature, but also from man-made world you can take inspiration. You can take inspiration from other product and you can utilize it in other product. Now let us discuss Scamper. So Scamper is an acronym for substitute, combine, adapt, modify or magnify, put to other use, eliminate and reverse or rearrange. Suppose you have a product, you can think, what if I change this material? It is currently made up of plastic. What if I change the material of this product? What can be the alternative material? Okay. So this way, in the substitute phase, you can think for any product. Next is combine. Can you join, affiliate or force together two or more element of your subject matter and consider ways that such a combination might move you toward a solution? For example, you can see this is glass fiber. Glass fibers are used for fiber reinforced plastic and resins also used, right. What if I change this glass fiber with natural fibers? What kind of natural fiber will go for a new kind of composite? What kind of new kind of resin I can get? So you are combining different kind of material. So you have an inspiration. Now taking this inspiration, so you are combining resin and natural fibers. So next is adapt. So in the adapt phase, it's basically taking inspiration from other things. It is basically the way we discussed analogy actually. So you can take inspiration from other objects. It may be from nature, it may be from man-made world. Next is modify. So modify any of the attributes like size, shape, dimension, texture, color, position, history and so on. So a product has multiple dimensions, you can modify its attributes. By modifying, what kind of new product you can get? Put to other use. So now you have one product, you have a washing machine. What if I put this washing machine for other purposes? So some people use washing machine for lassi making, for mass production. So similarly, you have one product. How this product will behave in other context? You can change the context and see how the product will behave. Eliminate. What if you arbitrarily remove any element of the product? This is basically towards simplicity, towards minimalism. So it is very easy to create a complex product. Our brain actually thinks in a complex way. So if we are asking you to think for a product, you will come up with a complex product. It will have complex mechanism, complex parts and all this. So it is very important to think in the next phase how to eliminate some of the functions. What if I eliminate this part? Will it still work or not? Reverse or rearrange. So it is also very important to change the perspective. So in schools you get punishment. You bow down and hold your ears, right? So similarly here you have to see the world in a reverse direction. If you bow down, you can see the world totally inverted, upside down. So the complete perspective changed. So sometime a reverse way also we should think. What if I hold a particular product in a different way? What if I use the product in a reverse way? Rearrange. You can rearrange the layout of the product also. Sometime rearranging also will give you a better product. So this way you can think for a new product. Now let us discuss about the concept selection matrix. So For example, you have concept 1, concept 2 and concept 3, and as well as multiple constraints or criterias. Okay. So, concept 1, concept 2 and concept 3. You have to make a matrix something like this, and you have to note down all those constraints. You must remember, during the discussion of the dot furniture, I have mentioned some of the criterias based on which we have selected the final concept. So, similarly, all those constraints or criterias you have to list down here. It may be, n number of criteria may come, okay? And you also have to give them weight. Weight means the total weight should be 100. Okay. Based on their importance, you can put weight. Okay. So, it may be 50, 20, 5, okay. So, I have just put it randomly just to show how to calculate. Okay. So, based on the importance you are actually ranking. So, these numbers are for ranks. Okay. Now, for concept 1 and 2 and 3, you also have to rank. So, for example, 1 is bad, 2 is moderate and 5 is a good product. So, here let us see in concept 1, for the criteria 1, it is fulfilling very nicely, and so I have to give it rank 5. Here I have to put 5 into 50. Similarly, in each boxes you have to calculate. So, here you have to again, for concept 1, for the criteria 1, what should I rank, whether it is fulfilling this criteria or not. If it is not fulfilling the criteria, I can put 1. So, 1 into 20. For concept 1, is it fulfilling the criteria 3? Moderately it is fulfilling. So, let us put 2. You can, so for the ranking, instead of 2 you can place 3 also, it is up to you. Okay. So, 2 into 5. So, similarly you will have all those numbers. Okay. So, let us sum up these numbers. So, you will have a number, right. For concept 2 also you will have a number, and for concept 3 you will have a number. Now, compare N1, N2 and N3, which one is more? So, among N1, N2 and N3, the highest number will be selected in this matrix. It is simple. So, thank you for listening this lecture.